The 2026 World Cup is facing a crisis. While FIFA is busy celebrating record-breaking ticket demand, a massive online boycott movement is catching fire across the globe. Fans aren't just angry, they're threatening to cancel their travel plans to the United States by the thousands. The world's biggest party, a celebration meant to bring us all together, is now staring down a perfect storm of controversy that could tear it apart before a single ball is even kicked. So, how did we get here? How did the dream of a massive North American World Cup turn into such a logistical and political nightmare? This isn't about just one thing. It's a crisis sparked by a toxic mix of unbelievable ticket prices, divisive politics, and a growing feeling among fans that the beautiful game has been stolen right out from under them. In this video, we'll dig into the unprecedented backlash threatening to derail the 2026 World Cup and ask the question on everyone's mind: can this tournament even go on as planned? Every fire starts with a spark. For the 2026 World Cup, that spark wasn't some big political scandal, but something far more personal for the average fan: the price of a ticket. When FIFA released the first round of prices, the global football community wasn't met with excitement, but with total disbelief and rage. Let's just break down the numbers that caused this explosion. For fans dreaming of seeing the final at MetLife Stadium, a single top-tier ticket was listed at an eye-watering $8,780. Even for the cheap seats at the earliest group stage games, you were looking at prices between $120 and $265. Now think about what this means for a real supporter. If you wanted to follow your team through just the 3 group stage matches, you'd be shelling out nearly $7,000 for tickets alone. And that's before you even think about flights, hotels, and the insane cost of traveling between cities spread across an entire continent. The reaction was instant and brutal. Football Supporters Europe, a huge group representing fans across the continent, called it a monumental betrayal. That same feeling echoed across social media and in fan clubs everywhere. The message was loud and clear: this isn't a World Cup for the people. It's a World Cup for corporate sponsors and the super rich, for anyone but the ordinary, passionate fans who are the lifeblood of the sport. The very soul of the tournament was being priced out of existence. The backlash got so bad that FIFA had to do something. They announced a concession they called the Supporter Entry Tier, a special group of tickets priced at just $60 for every single match. On the surface, it seemed like a win for fan power, but when you look a little closer, you see the cracks. This cheap ticket tier only accounts for about 10% of the total seats, which critics quickly pointed out amounts to just a few hundred tickets per match. In a stadium that holds 80,000 people, a couple hundred cheap seats isn't a solution. It's a PR move. It lets FIFA say they did something, while leaving the vast majority of tickets at prices most people still can't afford. But it gets worse. Maybe the most cynical part of this whole thing is FIFA's role in the resale market. On FIFA's official resale platform, they take a piece of the pie from both sides, 15% from the person selling the ticket and another 15% from the person buying it. Critics argue this creates a twisted incentive. It means FIFA directly profits from the insane, inflated prices that lock out regular fans. Instead of protecting fans from scalpers, the governing body of world football built a system where it gets a cut of the action. This feeling of being economically shut out was the first major crack in the foundation of the 2026 World Cup. It told the global fan base, "You're no longer the priority." And while that anger was simmering, a much more explosive crisis was brewing that would turn financial frustration into a full-blown political rebellion. If ticket prices were the spark, the political climate in the United States was the gasoline. Just as the outrage over money hit its peak, it slammed into a growing wave of political opposition. Suddenly, the calls to boycott weren't just, "I can't afford to go," but "I refuse to go." This is where things get really complicated. The political backlash isn't about just one policy, but a whole web of issues that have made the U.S. look like a toxic host in the eyes of many around the world. Let's start with the most obvious barrier: immigration. For months, International fan groups have been raising serious concerns about the Trump administration's hardline immigration policies. There's a real fear of invasive surveillance at the border, of being denied entry because of your home country, your political opinions on social media, or just the color of your skin. Mark Peeth, the former chairman of FIFA's own independent governance committee, gave a chilling warning to fans thinking of making the trip. He said, "You'll see it better on TV anyway, and upon arrival, fans should expect that if they don't please the officials, they'll be put straight on the next flight home." Let that sink in. The guy who used to oversee FIFA's own ethics is telling fans to stay away from the World Cup for their own good. Even disgraced former FIFA president Sepp Blatter agreed, saying fans should avoid traveling to the U.S. These aren't just vague fears. The administration had already put heavy travel restrictions and tough visa rules on people from dozens of countries, including several whose teams actually qualified for the World Cup. Nations like Senegal, a football powerhouse with a huge fan base, along with Ivory Coast, Iran, and Haiti, all saw their citizens facing a bureaucratic wall. It wasn't an outright ban for everyone, but it made attending the tournament practically impossible for many. In response, the U.S. government did set up a fast-track visa system for ticket holders, but critics immediately questioned how effective it would be. Would a fan from a rural village in Senegal really benefit, or just the wealthy who already know how to work the system? And more importantly, a faster visa doesn't fix the feeling of being unwelcome. The message had been sent: some fans are more welcome than others. But the anger wasn't just about who the U.S. was letting in. It was also about how the U.S. was acting on the world stage. This is where the boycott took a geopolitical turn. Critics started pointing to the Trump administration's aggressive foreign policy as a reason the country had lost the moral authority to host a global event. French politician Éric Coquerel put it perfectly, asking, "Can we really imagine going to play the Footy World Cup in a country that attacks its neighbors, threatens to invade Greenland, undermines international law, wants to torpedo the UN?" His words struck a chord, especially in Europe. The list of grievances was long: threats of military action against Venezuela, pulling out of international agreements, and a general disrespect for the very idea of global cooperation that the World Cup is supposed to represent. The feeling was that the United States was no longer a leader, but a rogue state. To give this nation the world's biggest sporting event felt, to many, like an endorsement of its policies. On top of all that, there was a more practical concern: physical safety. International visitors, especially from Europe, started raising questions about the high rates of violence in the United States. When you mix the political tension, the fear of being targeted at the border, and the real statistics on crime, the image of the U.S. as a safe and welcoming place starts to fall apart. For many, the dream trip to a World Cup was starting to look like a nightmare risk. As this anger and anxiety spread, Europe became ground zero for the boycott movement. This is where abstract complaints turned into actual, organized action. European politicians, fan groups, and even football officials started leading the charge, turning a hashtag into a real political threat. In Germany, the reaction was especially strong. A poll revealed a shocking number. 47% of Germans said they would support their national team boycotting the World Cup if the United States went through with threats to annex Greenland. This was the public drawing a line in the sand, connecting sports directly to geopolitics. That feeling was echoed from inside the German football world itself. Oke Göttlich, the vice president of the German Football Federation, publicly called out the hypocrisy. He pointed to all the criticism aimed at the last World Cup host, Qatar, over human rights. He asked, "Qatar was too political for everyone, and now we're completely apolitical?" His question was a direct challenge to FIFA, exposing a massive double standard. His point was clear: a World Cup in Trump's America was just as politically compromised, if not more so. The movement was maybe even stronger in the Netherlands. An online petition calling for the Dutch national team to boycott the tournament exploded, gathering over 156,000 signatures, The petition didn't pull any punches, stating, "We do not want our players to implicitly support President Donald Trump's violent terrorist policies against innocent migrants." That's not just a complaint. It's an accusation that participation equals complicity. Meanwhile, in the UK, politicians got involved. Dozens of members of parliament called on FIFA to kick the US team out of its own tournament. They drew a direct line to the decision to ban Russia from competitions after its military actions, implying the US government's actions were so far out of bounds, they deserved the same punishment as a country at war. What we're seeing in Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK is a full-on pressure campaign. It starts with public opinion, gets organized by grassroots movements, and is then amplified by leaders in sports and politics. Although both the German and French federations have officially ruled out a boycott, this European rebellion gave the movement real credibility. It was no longer just angry people on the internet. It was respected politicians and hundreds of thousands of organized fans demanding answers and transforming the 2026 World Cup into one of the most politically charged sporting events in modern history. With all this pressure mounting, the dream of a unified World Cup is facing a nightmare of division. But what do you think is the single biggest reason for this backlash? Is it the crazy ticket prices? Is it the divisive politics of the host nation? Or is it something else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you think is driving all this. So, with all this momentum, does any of this actually work? Are teams and fans really going to boycott the World Cup? This is where we need to look at the hard realities, because the arguments against a successful boycott are just as powerful as the arguments for it. The biggest thing working against the movement is a giant paradox: ticket demand. Despite all the anger and bad press, FIFA has reported that ticket requests for 2026 have shattered all previous records. And guess which countries are leading this charge? The US is number 1, but number 2 and 3 are Germany and England, the very places where the boycott movements are strongest. How is that possible? The answer seems to be, who is buying the tickets? The boycott is driven by regular middle-class fans and activist groups. The ticket demand, on the other hand, is likely coming from a totally different crowd: wealthy fans in the host country, corporate clients, and rich international tourists who aren't bothered by the high prices or the politics. This shows a deep split in the audience. One part of the football world is calling for a boycott, while another, quieter but richer part, is eagerly buying up all the seats. The stadiums will likely be full, letting FIFA claim victory no matter who is actually there. Then there's the issue of teams actually boycotting. Historically, the chances of a national team pulling out of a World Cup are almost zero. Just look at Qatar in 2022. Despite years of horrifying reports about human rights abuses, not a single one of the 32 teams stayed home. The reasons are purely practical. The World Cup brings in millions of dollars for national federations, money they need to run their programs. For the players, it's the absolute peak of their career. It only happens every 4 years, and most players only get 1 or 2 chances to be there. Asking them to give up that lifelong dream for a political cause is a huge ask, but saying the boycott will fail might be missing the point. The success of a movement like this isn't just measured in empty seats. This backlash is already having a huge impact in other ways. The biggest impact will probably be on the atmosphere of the tournament itself. A World Cup's magic comes from the joyful, chaotic mix of cultures: Japanese fans cleaning the stadium, Senegalese fans dancing in the streets, Dutch fans turning a city orange. If a huge chunk of these international fans are priced out or shut out, that magic is lost. The tournament risks becoming a sterile corporate event, mostly for wealthy Americans. It might have full stadiums, but it will lack the soul that makes a World Cup special. There's also the reputational damage. This whole mess has put a huge dent in the reputation of both FIFA and the United States. It reinforces the image of FIFA as a greedy, out-of-touch organization. For the US, it has amplified the view of the country as a divided and unwelcoming place, which could hurt tourism and its global standing for years. And maybe most importantly, this movement is different from the protests around Qatar. That was mostly about things that had already happened. The 2026 boycott is about things that are happening right now. The ticket prices are a current problem. The visa restrictions are actively stopping people from planning their trips today. It's not an abstract moral issue. It's a real, immediate problem. And that's why this movement has a different kind of energy. So, will the boycott work? If work means the tournament is canceled, then almost certainly not. But if success means exposing the greed in modern football and forever changing the conversation about sports and politics, then it might already be one of the most successful protests in sports history. We're at a crossroads for the world's most popular sport. The 2026 World Cup was sold as the biggest, most inclusive tournament ever. Instead, it's become a symbol of everything that pushes modern fans away from the game they love. A perfect storm of corporate greed and divisive politics has created a crisis that threatens the very soul of the event. We've seen how insane ticket prices told ordinary fans they weren't welcome. We've looked at how the host nation's politics have put up walls, both real and invisible, shutting people out. And we've watched a powerful rebellion, centered in Europe, that is challenging the very idea of holding this World Cup. The tragic irony of 2026 is that a tournament built on the promise of global unity is being torn apart by division. It's being hosted by a nation seen as promoting isolation, at a price that ensures most of the world can't even afford to show up. FIFA and the organizers will almost certainly push ahead. The stadiums will be full, a trophy will be lifted, and on paper, it will be a financial success. But the real question isn't whether the tournament will happen, but what kind of tournament it will be. Will it be a true festival of the world's game, that vibrant celebration of humanity we all love, or will it be something else? A hollow spectacle, a corporate event with a football match in the background, attended only by the few who could afford the ticket and navigate the politics. The stage is set, and the world is watching, but the biggest question remains: who exactly will be in the audience to see it?